Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in the House today. Thank you. Good thing I got you to look after me. I rise in the House today to speak on Bill 17, titled the Pension Plan Sustainability Transfer Act, and I will from here on refer to it as the PPSTA. This proposed statute would establish a process to facilitate the transfer of designated pension plans to existing shared risk pension plans currently registered under Part 2 of the New Brunswick Pension Benefits Act. And Mr. Speaker, these pension plans that we propose be transferred into are the same pension plans that the majority of government New Brunswick employees are part of. They are the same pension plan that the members of this House are part of. Now, I've been around long enough that I remember when this was hotly debated in 2014. I looked at it quite seriously, and I found out that I was eligible for a pension plan. I had spent my entire working life with no pension plan. My employees didn't have a pension plan. My colleagues didn't have a pension plan. Then I said, well, it's kind of interesting. At age 58, finally, I get a pension plan. But I was keenly aware of the fact that 60% of New Brunswickers, working New Brunswickers, do not have a pension plan. So when I looked at this, a few items I came to my mind quite seriously. I thought that first and foremost, the members of the Legislative Assembly should vote to move themselves into shared risk before they moved anyone else. And I was adamant about that. I said, you cannot bring in legislation transferring pensions, changing pensions, if you are not prepared to do it yourself and to do it to yourself. And so when the MLA pension plan was moved to shared risk, it is interesting to note, every sitting member of the House, both sides, voted in favor of it. And they voted in favor of it, Mr. Speaker, because the plan that the MLAs had was not fair to the taxpayers of New Brunswick. So we did it first and foremost so that no one could accuse someone of not standing up themselves. I was one of the ones who supported the move to shared risk pensions a decade ago. Those of us who were members at the time remember the situation, remember all the naysayers and all the doom and glooms. So I have a pretty good idea of what happened in 2014. So I want to give you a little memory lane experience. The government of the day brought in legislation for shared risk pension plan. The Liberal opposition, they opposed it. They were high-fiving and taffying up to the Pension Coalition and to CUPE and everybody that was affected. They were going on, this is terrible, this is an affront to labor relations. This is the end of collective bargaining in New Brunswick. You wouldn't, the moaning and groaning that was on was just exactly what I'm hearing today. But back in 2014, when this was done, Mr. Speaker, you vote for us, don't you worry, we've got your back. I heard it all. Well, then there was an election in 2014. The Liberals took power. And a lot of the people who objected to what we did and called, oh, we supported the Liberals are in power. Happy days. You know what they did, Mr. Speaker? Nothing. Nothing. And if the good people of CUPE actually think that anything's going to change, if the government changes, well, then they should go back in history, because history repeats itself, Mr. Speaker. And I would suggest, Mr. Speaker, that you will not see, if there's a change in government, you will not see a government transfer back from a sustainable pension plan back into an unsustainable pension plan. They didn't do it in 14, and should things be so bleak in this province that they take power, then I suggest they won't do it again. We've seen it. We've also seen defined benefit plans wreak havoc on our economy. We have seen businesses unable to fund the defined benefits. We've seen companies fail, and pensioners who thought that they were going to have a pension, that pension is gone or greatly diminished. St. Anne Nakawik Pulp and Paper is a prime example. And defined benefit plans, Mr. Speaker, are no longer in existence except in a few areas where they're holding on. And Mr. Speaker, to understand a defined benefit plan is any plan that, as it says, defines the benefit but doesn't define the contribution. If, for example, I had a defined benefit job, I would say to my employer, well, you have to pay me for 10 hours. Well, I can work as many hours as I want. I can work 5 hours. The only thing in the relationship that is defined is the benefit, not the contribution. So how could you possibly expect an employee and an employer to say, I want you to tell me what you're going to pay me, but I'm not prepared to agree to what I'm going to do to earn that? So it is fundamentally imbalanced. And that is why so many defined pension plans have declined, they have failed, and they have not delivered the expectation for the pensioners that they would have wanted. So what we're being asked here is fairness, equity. New Brunswickers are fair-minded people. But at what point can you say to 60% of the tax-paying, hard-working population who do not have a pension, so we're going to take your tax money and we're going to subsidize an imbalance in another organization? Do you ever notice little children when something happens, when 2 or 3 years old, that's not fair? Human beings have a fundamental understanding when something is not fair. And defined risk benefits are not fair. What we're doing here, Mr. Speaker, on the PPSTA, nobody's taken anyone's pension away. I would have no part of taking anyone's pension away or anyone's benefits away. We are taking a leaking, sinking boat, and we're moving people into a solid, seaworthy vessel. That's what we're doing here. Now, you can patch the boat and you can bail the leak and the old thing will list and sink and everything else like that. But there's a point at which, in order for the best interests of the passengers on the boat, that they need to go to a new boat that is seaworthy and sustainable and will take them safely to their journey. That, Mr. Speaker, is what it is we're attempting and are going to do here. There are approximately 7,850 active members in the plans that we're referring to. Interestingly enough, Mr. Speaker, an additional 2,500 people in the employ of the province of New Brunswick are now going to be eligible for a pension plan, which they otherwise did not have. 2,500 hardworking employees of the province of New Brunswick who do not have a pension are now going to have a pension. And I, Mr. Speaker, am proud of that. Our government has a responsibility to ensure all employees have a pension plan comparable to each other and to other employees, and to ensure that there is enough money in the plan to pay the employees in their retirement. That money has to be there. I don't have a pension plan, but for people who do have a pension plan, it deserves to be well sustained, well managed, and properly funded. I never had one in my private life. I have one now. Fine, you guys are real smart today. Shared risk plans. Before I go further, I feel I should back up and provide some information about the shared risk model. Again, in 14, I heard it all. You're taking away my pension. Well, first of all, of the 6,500 existing pensioners here, this doesn't affect any of them. If you're retired and you're on pension, this doesn't affect you. The New Brunswick shared risk plans are highly regulated pension plans. They are administered in accordance to the Pension Benefit Act, and they have three guiding principles. They must be secure, they must be sustainable, and they must be affordable. And the existing shared risk plans are administered by an independent board of trustees from both the employer and the employee, government and the employees. And there is a legal duty, a fiduciary duty, to make sure the funds are properly managed in the best interests of its members. Shared risk plans are subject to a variety of annual tests, filings, sustainability tests to make sure the critical mass of pension money is available to meet the obligations going forward to the pensioners. They are economically made sure that the money will be there, and they are tested regularly. They're highly secure. Shared risk pension plans make investments in more secure assets, which generally makes returns less volatile and lead to greater security during periods of negative and positive fluctuality. No better example, Mr. Speaker, than how the shared risk plans performed during the pandemic. During the pandemic, one of the first things that happened was the stock market crashed, absolutely vaporized. People's RRSPs dropped by 20, 30, 40%. Money that they had planned on for their retirement had evaporated. It reduced in its value. And a lot of people went through a lot of very tough times. Seniors who did not have a pension plan were very, very concerned about their viability. But what happened during that time? The shared risk plan, Mr. Speaker, held its value, paid its cost of living allowance, maintained its sustainability, and was completely and totally viable, sustainable, and liquid for the benefits of its members. And I can suggest to you, Mr. Speaker, that the shared risk pension plan performed infinitely better than most managed RRSPs. I'm not speculating, Mr. Speaker, looking into the future. Not in 2014, we said, well, this is what should happen. I'm talking about past performance. This model has been tried and tested and proven for the past decade. The Pension Coalition, remember them? Well, they've disbanded. You know why? Because their pensions are still being paid, their pensions are still secure, and their cost of living increases are greater under shared risk than they were under the old plan. Plan members and civil servants, retired public servants, their pensions are greater on shared risk than they would have been had they not converted. Number of people I bump into now, well, I know I gave you kind of a hard time over pensions, but gee, really, it worked out fine. I said, I remember you coming to my constituency office saying, you telling me that, I was going to take your pension away. You're going to lose your pension. Well, I know, but, yeah, Now we know, because it's tested. Mr. Speaker, we can learn more about shared risk plans, and I encourage people to seek it out. Get on the webpage, educate yourself, look at the results, talk to existing pensioners, ask them what they think of their pension plan. You know something, Mr. Speaker? The Brunswickers now are proud of their pension plan. You know why? Because they know it's there. It's there for them, and they know it. I find it interesting that when I go to look for more information, a lot of times there's not things available, so I've looked. So on the webpage, the province has done a good job reinforcing the data and the information behind what it is. And we need to be completely transparent to the taxpayers, transparent to pensioners, so that they know and understand exactly what is going on. Any debate must be about fairness, must be about equality, it must be reasonable. Mr. Speaker, I'm telling you, if I thought this proposal before this legislature was unfair, unjust, and would negatively impact and harm the participants of this plan, I would not support it. I wouldn't do it. One of the other things, when you look at the actuarial valuations of the plans, we're looking at some plans that are only 65% funded, only 78% funded. One plan is a deficit of $162 million. It is $162 million short of its ability to meet its obligations going forward. Another plan is $110 million short in its ability to meet its obligations going forward. Another plan is $52 million short. These are serious numbers, Mr. Speaker. Very serious numbers. They're not sustainable numbers. Talk a little bit about that in a few minutes, but currently, the plans are not viable. And we, as elected representatives, people in government who represent all New Brunswickers, not just a couple of CUPE locals, all New Brunswickers, we have to make sure that this application is fair to all. If it wasn't fair, Mr. Speaker, I wouldn't do it. If it wasn't fair, my colleague, who spoke yesterday, who has spent her life in labor, started as a secretary out of university in Prince William Street in St. John, and went on to be the national president of the Canadian Building Trades Union. Now, I'm telling you, Mr. Speaker, that's an impressive accomplishment. And that's a person who knows something about labor. And that's a person who's dedicated her life to labor. And I can tell you, if she thought, like I just said, if she thought that this was harming anyone, I've gotten to know her enough that I guarantee you she would not vote for it and she would not support it. Government and CUPE locals have been in negotiations for some time. I remember in 2022, the proposal, the collective agreement was, well, we'll negotiate the transfer, and the CUPE representatives at the time said, yeah, we'll enter into negotiations in that regard. One of the things that these negotiations produced was a suggestion that, oh, well, we'll join the Ontario Shared Risk Plan. The Ontario Shared Risk Plan, by its very nature, it would have cost $1 billion to join the Ontario plan, and I, quite frankly, don't think New Brunswickers need somebody in Ontario managing their pension. They would be a little wee speck of people, 6,000 people, with hundreds of thousands of people in the union. They would have no say. There wouldn't even be a rounding error. It's a bad decision. It was a bad idea, but it was just a smokescreen to delay. So, in the interest and fairness, I requested government to say, look, there's a lot of allegations about, well, haven't negotiated. Well, let's just negotiate. You're not negotiating. So the lawyer in me decided to do a little research here, and let's get some facts straight. November 13th, 2021, a memorandum of an agreement was signed between the government and CUPE locals that they would work towards a new pension plan by June 30th, 2022. There was another one that said we'll have a new pension plan by August 31st, 2022. There were meetings in June 2nd, 2022, June 15th, 2022, June 27th, 2022, August 8th, August 8th, August 16th, August 24th, and now I come into the next ones. This has been going on for a while. CUPE requests an extension. Well, the government said, okay, you can have an extension. Well, that went on for a while. Well, we'd like another extension. Well, okay, you can have another extension. Went into 2022, September. Oh, now another extension. And then we go on later into late 2022. Oh, another extension. And then we go on. CUPE proposes an extension to November 25th, 2022. Employer agrees. It's all logged and it's all dated. On it goes, on it goes, on it goes, into 22, into 23. And the last entry, September 22, 2023, a couple of months ago, lawyer for CUPE advises negotiations at an impasse. What more can we do? What more can you do? That's the timeline, Mr. Speaker. It has to be fair to all New Brunswickers. It has to be equitable to all New Brunswickers. And it is underfunded, and it is not sustainable. Now, one of the other things that I felt very strongly about was that if you're going to move the plan from the existing plan, the shared risk plan, the existing plan must be made whole and must be topped up, because you cannot have an unsustainable plan join a sustainable plan and have the old existing plan, the receiving plan, receive a whole bunch of liabilities. That's not fair to the existing pensioners, not fair to the existing plan. And if I was a trustee of the existing plan, I would not accept any plan that was not fully funded. So it was very important, I felt very, very strongly, Mr. Speaker, that it was extremely important that before the existing pension plans were moved into the shared risk model, they had to be made whole. They had to be topped up so that they were a sustainable plan, fully funded, joining a fully funded plan. And in order to do that, The taxpayers of the province of New Brunswick has to top the existing plans that we're talking about here. The estimated cost to top up the plans, which the government has agreed to do before they get transferred to shared risk, Mr. Speaker, $365 million. $365 million of taxpayers' money, of 60% of whom do not have a pension plan, is going to be transferred. It's going to be transferred into the existing plans before they're moved. Yes, that's right, Mr. Speaker, $365 million. That's not a typo. The plans will be made completely sustainable. They will then join with a completely sustainable plan, and it is the right thing to do. And it's the right thing for New Brunswickers. It's the right thing for employees, employers. And I know, Mr. Speaker, I'm old enough to know that fear-mongering does have a particular place in society. There's just the people that just do it. They can't help themselves. And I can understand the fear of change, particularly when it has to do with your pension. I remember in 2014, people actually saying, you are taking my pension away from me. I will have no pension if you do this. Scandalous, Mr. Speaker. You want to disagree on a particular issue, disagree, but get your facts right and say the truth. So clear things up here. Nobody's going to lose their pension. The actuarial models show it to be sustainable. History has shown it to be sustainable. The last decade has shown it to be sustainable. COVID has shown it to be sustainable. In fact, the shared risk plan have outperformed almost every other pension plan that we know of. And for those working and participating in one of the affected plans, you will continue to participate in your old plan up to the time of transfer. Following that transfer, you'll be part of a plan that is stable, consistent, and fair. Mr. Speaker, nobody wants to have a fight. Nobody's here to intentionally harm anybody. Government's writing a check for $365 million, but the government is the government of the people. It is not the government of a couple of CUPE locals. We have to represent the entire province.
Order.
You cannot govern representing a particular specific interest group. You have to do what is in the best interest of the province overall on a go-forward basis. We need to be fair. This is fair. This is a good plan. It is the right thing to do, and I completely and totally support it as much today as I did in 2014. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.